to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. Photo experts Charlotte Safavi and Robert Radifera join me today to talk about creating magazine-ready, narrative moments through expert photo styling and next-level photography. You may remember Charlotte from episode 138, where we spoke about the importance of having a stylist on your photo shoots. Well, today, Robert and Charlotte are now partners in Stylish Productions, a holistic boutique business dedicated to creating editorial quality interior architectural photography. Their work has been published in many magazines, including House Beautiful, Traditional Home, Southern Living, Coastal Living, Cottages and Bungalows, HGTV Magazine, Better Homes and Gardens, and more. Before we start our conversation, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Kravit. Kravit knows the importance of delivering an amazing project, especially in these crazy times. Their warehouses and showrooms are open with safety measures in place. They're offering virtual appointments and even curbside pickup at some of their showroom locations. Thank you tons, Kravit, for serving our community so well and also for believing in and sponsoring the podcast. Okay, I'm looking forward to sharing this conversation with Robert and Charlotte with you. Hi, Robert and Charlotte. Welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Robert, it's so nice to meet you today.
Nice to meet you too, LuAnn. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. And Charlotte, it's so nice to have you back on the show and to reconnect with you.
Absolutely. It's a delight being back and speaking to you, LuAnn.
I was thinking about it, Charlotte, and remembering that it was our dear friend Liza Jones that introduced us. I remember Liza writing me an email way back at the beginning of the podcast, and she said, LuAnn, you must interview this woman. She is a magician. She is a designer savior, and she is such a fantastic stylist. And then I looked into your work, and we had a conversation, and she was exactly right. It was an awesome show, but just taking a second to think about our friend Liza, right?
Right. It's very, very sad. Liza passed away from cancer, and she was such a warm person and such a shining light in our design community. And I'm most grateful for knowing her. We, Robert and I actually, with our business Stylish Productions, photographed a project for her when she was undergoing treatment, and she was so incredibly brave. And it was such a pleasure to give her those pictures back after 2 days of hard photography. And shortly after that, unfortunately, she did pass away. And as a small tribute, we are publishing actually that project in a local publication called Virginia Living, and I'm writing the story, and the homeowner was a good friend of hers, and we are going to be speaking about what a wonderful person she was and is in our hearts.
Oh, my goodness. That's amazing. And I'm going to tell you what, you need to post that in my Facebook group when it comes out, because all of our designer friends are going to love to see that. You said a warm spirit, kind, loving soul, a special human being, and she touched many of us. And I'm so grateful, to have been on the Signature Kitchen Suite in Napa, and she was on that trip. And, she's come to the birthday parties for the podcast. I mean, she's just a fun lady too, right?
Absolutely. She was a delightful person and a talented designer. And like I said, it was an honor to work with her. And she is close to our hearts always. We will remember her, and I will most certainly share that spread with you when it comes out next year.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's funny because Liza was the very first one-on-one coaching client I ever had.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yes. Yep. Yep. She called me and she's like, "Are you going to do this or not?" And I'm like, "Okay." She's like, "'Cause I want you to coach me." I was like, "Okay." And so that was also how we deepened our relationship. And so anyway, so I'm so glad that Liza brought us together. And now Charlotte has brought you and I together, Robert. So this is fun.
There you go. It's perfect.
Exactly. And the two of you now, since we last spoke with you, Charlotte, back at episode 138, you and Robert have now joined forces and created a new company, as we said, Stylish Productions. And you have combined your superpowers, you of being a photo stylist and Robert as being a photographer, and you've created this business that really caters to interior designers and architects in creating what you guys call editorial quality interiors. So one of you start us off with describing what does this service, what does it mean, and how is it different from your garden variety, interior photographer services?
Absolutely. So, Stylish Productions is dedicated to creating editorial quality interior and architectural photography, and I'll let Robert speak a little bit about it too. But my initial thought is, when I first started thinking about offering my services to interior designers and architects several years ago, ironically, around the same time you and I spoke was right when I was getting started. I had it in my mind that the business that we were in editorially was changing very rapidly. And the value of photography and imagery was actually going through the roof. So magazines were struggling. The visuals online were going through the roof. And at the end of the day, I felt I was a dinosaur. I had this skill set. I had come up through being trained and working with national magazines, producing shoots, photo styling shoots. And I thought, well, I'm just going to offer my services directly to designers and architects. And they started bringing me in on shoots. And what we ended up with was a product that was so much stronger. And with Stylish Productions, shortly after we spoke, I began to work with photographers, and Robert and I just clicked. And we were like, we're going to offer a holistic package almost to our clients, which is when they come to us, they're going to be the magazine. We're going to give them professional prep notes. We're going to give them professional prep. We're going to give them art direction, first-rate photography, post. And then after all that's done, we would have incredible editorial quality photography that we could publish, or we could submit for publication. And that's really how our business model has grown. We're very boutique in our approach, and we treat each project with great care. Robert, do you want to speak a bit about photography in general and why it matters right now?
Absolutely. In a world now where we're completely inundated with imagery, with Instagram and Pinterest and just everywhere you look, there's photography. I think it gets a little overlooked, sort of what we can offer, where we really are taking that photo and taking it to the next level. I mean, iPhones are great, and you can take beautiful photos with iPhones, but really taking the care into making those photographs the next level. And on top of that, once we are done with that imagery, taking it to magazines and getting them published and putting them in front of the right people. I think that's also insanely important, sort of in this business now, when everybody is competing with each other and trying to get to the next level. And that's sort of what we do. And with I've been doing photography, this kind of photography, for almost 30 years now. So it's definitely, the photography has evolved from the way in which things are shot, where it was just film and Polaroids, to now digital, and you're looking at it on a laptop. And it's exciting sort of right now, especially during these times. I actually do feel that designers are getting busier and busier because people are staying in their homes, and they're getting sort of fed up with what they're looking at around their home, and they're thinking to renovate or change. And it's definitely, and Charlotte, her eye is beyond anything I've ever seen before. And one of the things that I think is super important for designers to know also is that we are not coming in to change your design in the house, because a lot of designers will think, oh, well, I'm a designer. This is something that I could do. But styling for magazine-ready photos is a completely different skill set. We're not changing the design. We're just making it magazine-ready. And
I remember that from our conversation the first time with you, Charlotte, how understanding that the room designed for living is different than the room designed for photo shoots, that things have to be moved and adjusted because of what you see in the frame, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated, and later on maybe we can get into just sort of discussing our process. But when you're preparing or when you're photographing a space, there are a lot of things that need to happen editorially. Some props might work, some things might not, some things you might have to move, some things might be too small. Sometimes when we're shooting a living room, the furniture's all over the place, but it's all about how it's reading to the camera and to the eye. And we also know how to create a layout, in terms of, we know how to tell the narrative of a given space. And that, to me, I'm a storyteller. So my background is as a magazine writer. I've been published very, very extensively in many, many magazines, both as a writer and a stylist. Robert and I have had a lot of work published in many, many magazines, and I can throw names around, but we've been in all kinds of things, from Southern Homes, Southern Living. I've done stuff for Traditional Home, House Beautiful, Coastal Living. We've done stuff between us for many, many publications, Better Homes and Gardens, HG. So we kind of have a sense of what editorial looks like and what we need to achieve in a space. And photo shoots are very overwhelming, and they're big things for designers to do. And they've worked on these projects, they've given it their days and days, months and months, years and years sometimes. And I think that we can help refine, decide what projects are bigger projects, what projects are smaller projects. I help our clients all the time with this, with the right photographer for the right project. But when you come to us, we are creating editorial content. By way of an example, a pair of sisters who we're working with right now, one of them had a cottage that was out on the water in Maryland, in a small town on the Chesapeake Bay, and she showed it to me and said, I don't know, I think it's special, I'm not sure, I don't know if I should shoot it, it's small, it's, And I said, look, I know how to make this work for you. And I gave her suggestions and notes. The kitchen was not a fully renovated kitchen, but she had done some work in there, and I thought it was very charming. Well, we produced a shoot there. We prepped it. We went, we got it ready. We produced a shoot there. I then, after photography, spending a whole day, me and Robert working our butts off, getting all the right angles, producing the shoot, photo styling it to the camera. We placed that project. It's going to be in a local publication. Coastal Living just picked it up for next summer, and it's going to be in Cottage Style magazine the following year. Wow. So editors look to us for content, and we know how to give them what they're looking for. And that's an unusual situation in the sense that it got into 3 publications, but it's not unusual for us to shoot a project and get it published locally and then nationally. That can happen. But again, because I know all the magazines and I know the styles and the kinds of projects they look for, I know how to place stuff. I know who to go to. I know how to get it to that point, I guess. And so Stylish Productions we're extending our marketing support services as well, but we can get into that later. But either way, we don't promise publication, but we promise that you are going to have a beautiful set of photos for your website that has a story, that tells a narrative, and that looks fantastic, like your own little magazine.
Right. And so the thing about that is there's several things in here. Each of you said that I would love to pull apart a bit. First of all is that what I'm understanding, having the editorial background and not just any old editorial background, Charlotte, you are helping each designer figure out the story of their project, because I know that that is so important. I remember all the way back to Ren Miller, back in the first like 15 or 16 episodes of the show. He's the editor of Design New Jersey, and he said to us that if I have two projects that are equally as beautiful, all the other things are in place, and one has a storyline, that's where I'm going to go, because the reader, the idea of that editor is he's got to make a reader turn the page. And what makes a reader do that but the story behind the beauty, right? And so that's interesting, that skill set that you have that brings along. The other thing that I wanted to just ask is this is where I don't know what I don't know, because what I've always understood was if you have a project that gets into any sort of publication, then the big boys are going to say, forget it. It's been published before. And I've heard many designers, I just had a designer in a mastermind say to us last week, I have been holding on to the photos from this photo shoot for over a year, hoping that these two places that I've pitched it would finally pull the trigger and accept it. And she just said, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to go. I'm going to put them on my website. I'm going to put them in my social. I'm not going to worry about it. I can't wait any longer. So how isn't that unusual that somebody said a bigger magazine would say you were already in this magazine, let alone in other locations?
Right. I think that is changes minute by minute. And because I'm working with a lot of different people all the time, I kind of have a sense of that. I think that there are some national magazines who literally don't want a project that's been photographed anywhere, like Milieu, for example. If it's been on a website, if it's been on social media. The one project that I did for Milieu several years ago was for a major, major designer, and she just couldn't put that project anywhere. So some magazines are like that, but there are other publications that don't mind, depending on the timing of it. And, so yeah,
so
no,
it's
I think
changing.
Well, I don't know if it's changing. I think it's different in every instance.
Okay.
And whenever I submit project nationally that's been published locally or is going to I tell everybody knows what's happening. So it really is project by project. We photographed another project, I want to say last year or the year before, and that's going to go into a very big national magazine next year. And it did get published locally. But when that national magazine picked it up from us, they knew that it had been published locally because I'm a really straight shooter. People who work with me, I'm very, very honest. But that's just my personality. So when I submitted the project, I said it's been in a local publication, this year, and we're looking for a national slot for it. Well, the photos were amazing. This particular project had photographed beautifully. And the editor there just said, I want it. It worked out because of a variety of different reasons, not just our photos, but it was the designer and their background and their training and a lot of different things. But again, that was all presented by me I pitched the story. So I'm a storyteller, narrative writer. I'm very specific. If I find the angle, I pitch the story.
What I would say is it sounds like you're a great salesperson. That's what I would say.
Well, you know it because that's
that's it, because that is, you're drawing them in. Here's the story of this. These are the players. This is why this is important. And yes, it's been published before, but you want to miss out on it? Why? Right?
Why? Exactly. And that the publication picked it up and they just said, could you please make sure that nothing else goes on social media
in between?
In between. And of course, we all stripped our accounts. I think it really, really depends. And it's funny you mentioned that about the sales, but I've had a very diverse and varied career, LuAnn. I studied human sciences at Oxford University. I have an MA. I went after that and worked in, that's completely pure science. It was like genetics. My thesis was on genetics, but it was about multidisciplinary approaches to anything. So when you would study spina bifida, you would look at the epidemiology, you would look at the sociology, you would look at the psychology, you'd look at the genetics, the biology. So I've always been a multidisciplinary head, which is why Stylish Productions is a multidisciplinary business in our approach. We don't look at it. We're just going in to shoot the thing. We're looking at it from every angle possible. But after that, I worked in Hollywood as a film agent for 10 years.
Whoa.
So that's where I fine-tuned and honed my pitching skills, right? So, you've got to look at who you are and where you came from always. And, I worked contracts. I knew what producers to put together with what projects,
Yes.
And so I bring all that wealth of background to Stylish Productions and to the business that we have now, which is a holistic boutique photography service that looks at things holistically. And Robert, I'll let him talk about his background, but he's interesting too, and a photographer at his core. At his core.
Well, Robert, I good luck trying to make it sound as interesting as that. But go ahead, you give it a shot.
Well, I don't really know where to start after that. That was pretty amazing.
Stop.
It was awesome. Well, I mean, not as I started off as I don't even know where to go with this. I started off.
We got him flustered. You got him flustered. I'm serious. Like a scientist, a film agent, a photographer.
Robert, get in your NPR mode.
That's it. We have to have a little book about you too, like for young women, like young girls, like be like Charlotte.
That's right. Started making T-shirts, a whole campaign out of the whole thing.
That's it.
I was an economics major in college. I switched over to photography, and
You're starting off good, I gotta say. Okay, go ahead. No,
it wasn't so bad. My dad had an amazing job out for me when he was an economist as well, and he had an awesome job waiting for me right out of college. And I told him, you know what? I don't think I can do that. I'd much rather do art. They kind of look at me like I'm insane. Both of my parents, I'm first generation here in the United States. So my dad was from Madagascar, and my mom's from Jamaica. And so for them, really, you come to the United States and you make a life for yourself. And art really wasn't that life that they were thinking, really. They were like, are you crazy? Like, I have this job in New York City for you, and you want to be an artist? But they are awesome, and they are super supportive, and they let me live at home for about a year and a half without really making any money, because artists at 21 don't make any money. Mm-hmm. But I did find photography to be it was always there in the background. And I started working with a commercial photographer back in the day, and learned the art of commercial photography, and it was amazing. And it just took off from there. And it is every day that we do photography, it is an art form. Like, I get to create a little piece of art, and Charlotte is there as we're co-artists in the whole thing, and storytellers. And when we talk about telling the story, it's not just photographing, oh, here's a bathroom and here's a hallway and here's it is telling the story of the house, and sort of where the designer started from. And that definitely takes a skill. And sometimes at the end of the day, when it's like 10 hours into the shoot and Charlotte's like, we have to get this shot, we have to do this last thing, and everyone's like, no, it's so late, we can't do this anymore, we've been working so hard. She's like, it's part of the story, this is what. And then, of course, months later, when the magazine comes out, and every single shot, and that last shot we took when everybody's just ready to pack up and go, and that last shot is the shot that sort of tells the whole story of the house. And that's the sort of that's what Stylish Productions really is about. Like, we're sort of, when we talk about a one-stop shop, it's everything is there, and it's a long and it's a hard day, and it's all worth it in the end, because you have that final product that is astounding, and it's back to the old school ways of photography, really, where you would work on images versus just taking images. You were making images now.
It sounds amazing. It sounds like a fantastic process. And so my question is, you've mentioned that you have a specific process. And so in order to get that story, the two of you, it sounds like you probably have something at the beginning with the designer, the way the designer would have the beginning conversations with the homeowner of, who are you? What does this home mean to you? What do you want it to do? How do you want it to support your family, your lifestyle, right? Are you having those types of conversations with the designer when you approach a project? Like, let's go through your process a little, because in going through your process, I'm hoping for the designers that are listening to us today, you guys, is that through telling us your process, Charlotte and Robert, that someone who's not yet able at that level to hire a firm like yours could at least say, oh, so this is how I start to get at the heart of the story. Oh, this is some of the steps and the things I have to question for myself. Okay?
Right. Okay. So I'm happy to take the lead on this. And so I think that so one thing that I wanted to get across that's really important is that we're kind of background people. Our designers and the spaces they create, they're the star of the show. What they do is incredible. I could never do what they do. I have no interest in doing it because it would completely overwhelm me. So we just basically, like, I want to reiterate that interior designers are incredibly talented, skilled people at creating beautiful interiors. Our job is how to give them the best, most memorable photography that captures the essence of their work. So I would say our initial process, if a designer was to call us and talk to us and say, hey, I've got this project to shoot, my initial question isn't necessarily, whose home is it and this or that. What I really want to see initially are just scouting shots. So scouting shots, basically the designer can go, or I can go take a look, but it's really just a rough home tour of what that space looks like, what the dishes are, what what props are at the house. It's more to do with that. And when you see the design of a house, the conversation does come up: who lives there, what do they do, why did they hire you? Those conversations all come into forming ultimately how we prop the house. But we're more interested in being true at that point to how the designer wants the house to look for their photos, because that can come later. When we develop a pitch, then we can talk about what's unique about the project and house. But when you're taking the photos are really to give the designers the best imagery that best reflects their work in how they want their project to look. Because we're shooting for their website. Now,
right. Okay.
Right. But for example, if it is a family house and there are kids' rooms, then when it comes to talking about prep, that's when I might say, hey, they're young kids, maybe in the basement, we can, set up like a popcorn night or something like that, so that does feature into it. But the most important thing for us as a photography team is to capture what the designer wants. I don't get too lifestyle-y with propping. If you go to the Stylish Productions Instagram page at Stylish Productions, if you look at all our photos, they're all very clean. There is lifestyle, but I don't want to smother a space in lifestyle, because we're photographing design. We're not photographing a messy kitchen. So I'm kind of specific about that. Now, some publications might like more lifestyle, so it's not uncommon for me to say, hey, let's shoot it this way, but then I'm going to add a bit more lifestyle possibly if I feel like it's going to help me sell the project. But our primary job is not to, create editorial quality content, but it's to really capture the designer's intent for that space. So does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. It's interesting, and it does make sense. And I imagine you probably are doing a little bit of both. But what I'm really hearing is that your number one person involved in this shoot is the designer and what his or her goals are for the space. And then secondarily, if the designer's also, wish is to be publicized and have that in a publication, then you're going to layer in and say, okay, and for publication, let's, do this or that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a conversation. But again, we often help our clients select so they might show us 2-3 projects, and we might say, hey, this is a good one to focus on if you're interested in publication. But how we prop it and style it, so far anyway, we've been doing what works for the space and for the designer, and that aesthetic, and with the photo styling and the way it's done has served us as a publication, has picked it up like that. So
okay.
Yeah. So the elements that we talk about with our designers in terms of propping. So I get scouting shots. They don't have to be pretty. I just want to know what a space looks like. If it's a space that I can visit, I visit. But people from out of town have sent me stuff, and we've talked it through, and but use those scouting shots. So I want to get a sense of how that house or space lays out. And then we talk about, what the homeowner has in terms of hard props. We talk about fresh elements like floral. We talk about, fresh elements like fruits and vegetables or a bundt cake or whatever it is. And we talk about hard props that might need to be layered in. So I might say this room is very beautiful. It's very neutral, but I think, maybe let's add some texture with a basket of throws because it's not in that particular design. And we just talk about all those elements ahead of time. So in my style notes that I do for my clients, or for our clients, I should say, I do include what I call inspo shots, which maybe there's a living room. I send in some living rooms that we photographed to give people not like, let's do it like this particular shot, but more like this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. The style isn't like this, but this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. Then we do the prep, which is we actually go out and do the shopping. And again, a designer might want to do all that on their own, but they've got my style notes, so they have a sense for what we need, but we also can offer that service. And often when I've got a shoot coming up, I've got an odd photographic memory for space, which Robert can expound on later. But so I might be out on a completely irrelevant errand. I might be at the farmer's market and I might see some quince and I might think, hey, I've got a shoot next week. This quince is fabulous. I snap a shot, send it to my designer. Or we haven't decided what to do with the tabletop. I might be at my garden center and I see a topiary. Oh, that could be great. I snap it, send it to the designer. And they let me know. So I'm kind of constantly sort of thinking ahead. And if I see something that I think will be strong, I will grab it. I also... I'm spontaneous too in my approach. I might be driving up for a shoot and I might see some hedges that have forsythia in them and, at the edge of the property.
And you go steal the forsythia from the neighbor right there?
Yes, she does. You joke, LuAnn, but that's actually, if I ever get a phone call that Charlotte is in jail.
She's got her hedge cutters in the trunk.
That's exactly right. Every day she'll come up with
and she's got a big hat, incognito.
Sunglasses, dressed in black. It's pretty awesome.
Right. I'll give you an example that's really actually quite hilarious. So we have a wonderful client in North Carolina, and we were there prepping a shoot for her, and it was late at night, and we were driving back. I really wanted some cherry blossoms. Like, I was obsessed with the idea. And she agreed that it would be great if we could have some cherry blossoms. So we were literally driving around at night and we ended up at the edge of the road, like it was a public road. And I'm like, there are the cherry blossoms in the middle of the night. We're out there with our clippers. And you know what, LuAnn, seriously, like, it was hilarious. We would never denude a tree. I just want it on the record that if we ever borrow anything like that, we always take it from the back or wherever. We never strip it. But those branches ended up in our shoot in a beautiful shot that's actually on our slideshow that I had created for a previous presentation. But and they ended up in a magazine. They ended up in Cottage Style. So we go the distance.
It's a good thing you don't have to list your sources for all the props.
That's right.
And then on shoot day, that's the day. Well, we have a prep day if the designer wants it, but I always recommend that even if the designer doesn't use us for prep or me for prep, that they go ahead and do it themselves. Like, i.e., get as much set up as humanly possible so that on shoot day, it's not stressful. That on shoot day, you're not running around like a chicken with your head cut off, boxes all over the place. That you're ready, and that it's a calm day, because this is your day. Like, we want our designers to sit in the armchair, and we're very high tech, and we have COVID guidelines which allow for remote viewing. So just sit in your armchair and watch the shoot. It doesn't have to be a stressful experience, because we will tell the story of your space in collaboration with you, with the edge taken off that stress factor. So we collaborate very closely with our clients, and shoot day is all about getting telling the visual story of a space. We're storytellers. Like I said, I was in film. It's all about the narrative of how this house unfolds in terms of a pictorial thing, and that's where Robert and I. Robert does his thing. We do our work together to find the best way, and we have fun with that. We love what we do. Right, Robert?
It's awesome. It is great. And the designers that we work with are spectacular as well, So, I mean, you go into it knowing it's going to be a long, hard day, but it is, by the end, you're laughing. And if there happens to be champagne for some props or wine for props, somehow that magically disappears by the end of the shoot. Nobody really knows that.
Yeah.
It's just we don't know what happened to it, as a
We don't
matter
know
of
what happened
fact.
to it.
That's not getting returned to the store, right? That prop isn't going back. I mean, the couple of things that I want to just clarify here is that what I've heard is the objective is for the website photography. The objective is for creating photographs that will be on a designer's website, but in addition to that, with the expertise that the two of you combined, which creates stylish productions, you're also able, part of the delivery is the complete editorial package. In other words, and I don't know if that's a different fee or if it's a different level of service. I'm just talking about what you're capable of doing. So, and one objective is website photography. One objective is telling the story through on a designer's website. But the other little nudge that is your superpower as a team is that like you said, like we're going for the cover try. And so that's something that you're thinking about with each of your background combined. And you're saying editorially, which one of these would be the cover shot and how would it be shot and what would be the supplemental pictures that would go in to the story if it were in a magazine. And then what happens is, if I'm understanding correctly, it's possible to end the photo shoot with that whole thing tied up in a bow, and then you add to it your skill set of pitching and relaying to the different editors the storyline and the actual entire layout of the article. You provide them because that's your expertise. It's now not just, here's 16 pictures that we took, here's the idea of the story, how would it be laid out? You take it to the next level.
So when an interior designer finishes a project, they either have an existing relationship with a photographer or they need a photographer to shoot. So they look at X, Y, and stylish productions. We're all in the same ball, we're all in the same thing. So essentially, we are a photography service, just as a photographer is a photography service. We just happen to have that layer built into our work, that we're more holistic in our approach.
Right.
So when you look for a photographer, and I would say this is advice to, your designers, there are different projects, there are different layers and levels of photography. You can hire somebody who is a real estate photographer if you just want to capture, the whole space. There are different ways to do it. There are a lot of younger photographers who are sort of shooting with natural light and they've moved into that field. Sometimes they can be wedding photographers who moved into that field, whatever it is. So you've got that level. We're at the level where the photography that we do is the more editorial style, which different photographers offer again. So,
right.
we know how to light a shot. We know how to layer a shot. We know, a bit more about angles and all that. But we're even a bit more than that in the sense that our business model is holistic. So we've got a built-in photo stylist on the shoot and a built-in producer, which is me, which can give some art direction and another set of eyes to how we develop the layout of the thing.
So I'm curious, Robert, you mentioned that you've spent 30 years as an interiors, I'm assuming interiors photography for the 30 years, but even so, what is it? 3 years ago, I've interviewed Charlotte, and you guys weren't partnered then. So you were working as a photographer. You mentioned that you met her, and she mentioned that you hit it off. Coming from your perspective as a photographer, Why did you decide to partner with Charlotte, and what is it about the process that you appreciate with having the stylist right there and the stylist responsibility not being left to the interior designer?
So in life in general, I always feel that it's always good to have an extra set of eyes to help with sort of whatever you're doing. If you're cooking dinner with your spouse, if you're, doing a paint, any kind of artwork, but especially when it comes to something along these lines, when you have somebody that's trained to find that correct angle, because it's easy to go ahead and walk into a room, pop on the widest angle on your camera, and get the whole room. So you get from left to right with a ton of floor and a ton of ceiling. If you're looking at an MLS photo to see to sell on a real estate site, that's fine. It shows the room and it does what it needs to do. But when you really want to feel what that house and that room and what you could imagine yourself sitting in that chair or laying in that bed or watching TV in front of the fireplace, you want to imagine yourself there. Having a stylist, like I said before,
photo stylist.
Right, sorry. having a photo stylist there at that point definitely adds to sort of the value of what we're seeing in that photo. So I could be getting the angle where I think it looks beautiful, and Charlotte will say, "Oh, could you step it to the left a little, or maybe we want to be up a little bit higher, or go back a little," and very small and minor tweaks like that make a huge difference in the final outcome.
Robert, share the Southern Living story, the Southern Living kitchen shoot. What we ended up with.
Which one was which story is this one?
That's the one I made you shoot upside down.
That's right. So there was a shot that we just couldn't get low enough with the gear that I had, and my tripod and all these things. It just didn't really work. And Charlotte is very insistent about making the impossible happen, and I'm very amenable to sort of making the impossible happen. So she's like, "Well, what if you just turn your tripod upside down, or put your camera so that it's upside down?" And so
It was a step-down kitchen that we were doing as a half-day shoot for the client's portfolio. Okay, go ahead, Robert. Sorry.
So that is what I ended up doing, putting the camera upside down, and we were at the exact angle where I could have been 2 feet higher, and the angle would have been fine. But being lower down, the angle was perfect, and it really made the difference.
Wow.
And that's what it's about when you really go to the next level. Like when you're
And then what happens in Photoshop or in editing? You have to turn it right side up again.
So
doesn't it take it upside down?
It takes it upside. Then everyone has to turn their computer over just to make sure that you can see the photo correctly.
Oh my goodness!
But having that sort of collaboration between the two of us, I had been doing interiors forever, right? And I was shooting a lot of architectural photography. My brother's an architect. My cousin is a kitchen designer, so I did a lot of work for them, and so it was very specific kinds of work. It's different when you're shooting for an architect or a kitchen designer. Like you need to show elements and you need to show items. If you're shooting an office building, they want to see the space, the scope of that space. But if you're shooting for a designer that created a moment for their family, like this is where we eat dinner. This is where we open the holiday gifts. This is where that's what they want to feel. And having a photo stylist on top of myself, like the two of us, we talk. It's not like Charlotte says, "This is what needs to happen." Like we talk and we talk with the designer, and like we're creating this moment that could not happen solo. And having a lot of different voices, a lot of different eyes, it makes for the perfect image at the end. So when we decided to, Charlotte and I worked together before we worked together. Does that make sense? So we had worked.
Yeah, we've worked together years. Yeah.
We had worked on
years.
jobs where she was the photo stylist and I was the photographer, and we had nothing to do with each other. We were just there, hired separately by different people to come and do this. And then it was at one point where Charlotte said, "I've been thinking about this, and would you be interested?" And I said, "Absolutely, let's try." Because, at the end of the day, the imagery was beautiful. It takes a lot of work to make it look like you did no work, that you just walked in and the room looked like that. Like if you look behind that beautiful photo. There's boxes and there's couches in the
Right.
corner. There's a whole mess behind you. But that moment is gorgeous and beautiful, and it takes work.
Right. It's like when we see the pictures in the magazines of the iconic actresses that we think look so beautiful, but meanwhile there's tape holding this
That's
up and
exactly right.
staples in the back.
Exactly. That's
There's a whole
exactly. You
crew.
said it.
There's a
You
whole
said it.
crew blowing wind and patting
That's it.
sweat
That's
and doing
it.
all the things. There's nobody looks like that.
Exactly. Exactly. It sounds like a really amazing process. And I have to say, two words come to mind when I think about this process, Robert and Charlotte together. And they both describe Charlotte right now. One is slave driver, and the other is advocate. So I can see the tenacity that, Charlotte brings with her advocacy for the designer and the project, right? And then, you being there and having your skill set and your talent and, picking it up and, like you said, offering your insights and your advice, and then adding your all those years of experience and taking the photographs. But it would be fun to just have like the fly on the wall of a photo shoot with you two.
We
Oh,
thought about putting
absolutely.
GoPros on both of our heads and just sort
You
of to
should.
watch the whole
And
day.
by the way, like Netflix, like seriously, the Netflix show of behind the scenes of your photo shoots would
Well,
be
and
awesome.
Netflix produces everything, so we should probably pitch it to them. Like
That's
one of
right.
the next billion shows that they have on there. I would love that.
Exactly. I mean, it just sounds because what I'm really hearing is, to just repeat myself because I really do think it's a fun, interesting thing that I've learned is that it is that you do have this high driving expectation of yourselves and what you're going to be as the partner for the designer. Like I hear that, Robert, you're talking about one more shot, like you've got to do it and, all of that stuff. But at the same time, the level that so your advocacy for that designer is so apparent, but then you have this pride in what you're going to do yourselves too, and then add to it the years of experience and the combined backgrounds is really a nice little combination of magic there, I think.
Absolutely.
So I think it's awesome and it's so exciting, and I hope that some of our designers got some ideas on, to me, taking it to that next level and thinking it through. And whether you are fortunate enough to work with someone like the two of you, or you've got to do it yourself a little bit along the way until you get to that level, at least the idea and the thoughts imprinted and to get your mind wandering on thinking more deeply about what's happening, because we do know that photography right now every single designer that comes on the show says just make your budget for photography. It's a non-negotiable because the world has
Exactly.
changed, between, as you mentioned, Pinterest and Instagram and all of the things. It's a non-negotiable. So awesome. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us on the show.
LuAnn, thank you, thank you. It was a pleasure and an honor to be on your show and talk to you. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's always so interesting to me how we can have so many different conversations about photography, right? And each photographer that we've had has brought a little different perspective to every conversation. So, episode 563, Mike Van Tassel talked about expressing your brand through photography. And episode 343, Raquel Langworthy talked about how to partner with a photographer. And then Stephen Carlish on episode 369 spoke about how to get more out of your photo shoots. And then Sarah Winchester, episode 444, talked about usage and copyright. And we had David Livingston in episode 51, way back in the beginning, talked about house and photography regarding that. And then we had Linda Holt, episode number 97, how she told us how she went from being a photographer to an interior designer, and she gave us little pointers on how to use our iPhone effectively for pretty good shots, right? So the thing is, each of these photographers are experts in their own right, and each has brought information here to help you with your interior design business and help you with getting better photographs. So I encourage you to go back and take a listen to each of these episodes. Now, What's interesting about how Charlotte and Robert is their goal is to capture a beautiful moment, but then to go even further and tell the story of the space, right? You heard them describe what it takes to produce this level of photography. It's not easy. And first, what they're doing is they're assessing the situation, checking out what props are already on site, making note of what still might be needed. Thought is also put into how the client wants the house to be reflected. The props are a big part of this process. And it used to sound crazy to me. Okay. Now I'm getting very highly educated on this process, though, right? But it used to sound crazy to me that a room that was literally just beautifully designed isn't really necessarily photo ready. Right. And so now I understand through the help of all of these experts that the wow factor of a room might be and can be skewed by the camera if objects aren't moved, added, or subtracted. And this takes a very well trained eye, which is where stylists like Charlotte come in. Right. She thinks about where should the florals go? What kind of florals are right for the space? Do we need texture? How about moving the table over a little bit to the right, which looks totally wrong in real life, but looks great for the photo, okay? After all of the brainstorming, purchasing, and prep comes the actual photo shoot. Enter Robert, right? The collaboration between the experts are key. This is really the moment where the team of two uniquely talented experts plays out in what ends up being a very long, exhausting day. And I would say team of three, right? So you have your stylist, Charlotte, you have your photographer, Robert, but you have you there too, right? The designer who created the room. And together, the three of you have put together something. And now in the process, at least if you're working with Charlotte and Robert, you're going to now craft that story, okay? And you're really going to bring in all of the things that really create that secret sauce, right? And I love that because now what Charlotte says is with her experience with the publications, she's able to guide the designers that she works with into really trying to figure out if their project is suitable for publication and more than that, which publication might be interested in it. And she also explained that what it takes, to take it to this next level is that ability to tell a story about a space. And that is what these publications are looking for. It's a lot of work, but in the end, they have, with the help of you, the designer, created and captured the amazing qualities of a space. And they provide a neatly packaged set of content that you can use to woo potential clients and publications alike, right? So I hope that this conversation got you thinking about photography in a new way. I know that with each conversation like this, I have a new level of respect for both the photographer and the photo stylist and their part in really helping really just tie the bow on all the hard work that you've put into it to get to that point, right? Just like Robert says, making it look like you did no work. I love that. That's awesome. All right. So let's talk about LuAnn Live, shall we? Yes, we shall. Tickets are on sale. Early bird tickets. If you're listening to this in real life and real time, 12/18, what is it? 12/18/20. How could I forget? Like the year of 2020, right? But early bird tickets are on sale through 12/31. Okay. So, and if you sign up for any of the 3 ticket levels, whether it's general admission, 2-day all access pass, or the VIP exclusive experience, which is sponsored by our friends at East End Interiors, you save $100 per ticket and you get an invite to 3 Zoom accountability sessions with me post event. Okay, that's right. Only the early bird ticket holders and me. We're going to get together 2 weeks after the event, 4 weeks after the event, and 6 weeks after the event. And we are going to talk about your takeaways, the lessons you learned, the action steps you've taken. And I'm going to answer any questions you might have on how to turn the information that you got from LuAnn Live into results. All right, because it's all about turning the inspiration into action. All right, so go to luannlive.com to sign up. And I want you to keep in mind, even though a virtual event can have unlimited attendees, I am limiting the amount of tickets in each tier because I want to be able to deliver on all the things I'm telling you I'm going to deliver on. All right. So go over to the website, check it out. General admission is view only. See all the panels, you see all the content, you see the additional presentations, you see my keynotes and my aha sessions at the end of each day, but it's view only. Okay. 2-day all access. All of that, okay, plus you're part of the live audience. Okay, I'm gonna have multiple TV cameras set up and TV station, TV. What the heck are they called? TVs, just TVs. They're called TVs. Multiple TVs set up so I can see you, and there's going to be multiple cameras on me so you can see me. All right, and you're going to be able to ask questions during the discussions. You're going to be able to ask the co-authors, the panelists, and me, just like last year when we were in person. Do you remember how cool that was? It was like a room of 300 that felt like a room of 20. We are going to do our very best to duplicate that experience, okay? So that is at the 2-day all access. And also at the 2-day all access level, you are eligible for all of the prize giveaways. I'm going to be giving away prizes to LuAnn University. We're going to be giving away prizes from the co-authors, coaching sessions, the sponsors, all the bells and the whistles. But that you have to be at that middle tier ticket, okay? And then, of course, we have the VIP exclusive experience sponsored by East End Interiors. So at this VIP exclusive experience, which is limited, okay, severely limited, okay, then you get everything from the first 2 tiers, plus you get the 3rd day. And we're going to have presentations that day, and then the big thing about the VIP. You're going to get a little swag box. You're going to get all the, the pretty things that you guys like, right? But the big thing about the VIP is you are going to be a part of 6 1/2-hour roundtable discussions. Think on this for a moment. You, 2 colleagues, and 1 expert. So maybe your Zoom room opens and there's Sandra Funk sitting in front of you. And it's you and 2 other colleagues and Sandra Funk for 30 minutes. Pick her brain, ask her anything you want. And then boom, 30 minutes, boom, next Zoom room. Oh, it's Darla Powell. Ask her anything you want. Boom, next Zoom room, Ariane Belazar. Ask her anything you want. She's an expert on video, by the way. I would ask her about those things, okay? So this is going to happen for 6 switches. Think about the value of that right there. Being able to ask 6 of these experts any question you want. I mean, I'm just saying. We have done this for Power Talk Friday tours. We did this for LuAnn Live last year. This is amazing. And on the Power Talk Friday 1-day coaching event tour, days, I would have to say it's the highlight of the day. Well, maybe the celebration dinner with the wine is the highlight of the day, but this is a very close second. Okay. So head over to the website. We are adding information every day about the things that you get. Grab your ticket before 12/31/20, and I'll see you in February, and I will see you again for those 3 Zoom sessions. All right, go to LuAnnLive.com. And I want to do a shout out now to some of the sponsors of LuAnn Live before I go. My Doma Studio. Please head over to mydomastudio.com/a well-designed business to learn about My Doma Studio. Revelwoods. Go to revelwoods.com, REVELWOODS.com, and learn more about Revelwoods and how they can help you make money in your business. And IDS, InteriorDesignSociety.org. Each of these companies, organizations are trusted colleagues of mine who I have come to know personally over the years, and I highly recommend you check them out to learn how they can help you improve your business by working and being associated with them. All right. Lastly, I want to say the book is out. The 3rd book is out. So if in the meantime, between now and then, you want to pick up any of the books, okay, 1, 2, or 3, you can head over to Amazon and just search LuAnn Nigara in Amazon. I have to say, I think they might make a nice holiday gift for a friend or a family on your list that is into business and entrepreneurship, all right? Of course, the first book is literally written to all entrepreneurs. The second 2 books do speak specifically to the design community. However, you know what I always say. hey, substitute the word design for bricklaying. Business is business. It all works, right? So, all right. Thank you so much for joining us today. My thanks to Charlotte and Robert for joining us today. I really hope that you will not delay. Do not get locked out of the ticket level that you want to be on, okay? Because I'm like legit on this. I need this to be, like I've said, eyeball to eyeball. All right. So we're going to limit it, and I hope that you will be with me. All right. And I hope that you'll decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.